what are some of the biggest things you learned about like the power of Catholic social teaching?
Yeah, no, thank you for that question. So, yeah, I think for me, I learned like the value of talking to people, which I know sounds obvious, but the first book I wrote on Rwanda, again, I think is a good book. It made a real contribution, but I was largely working in archives, and there was real value in that. But I think this book on Uganda was really talking to people. I think the opening line in the book, it's, this priest says to me, the information is not in the archives, it's in our heads. And so so I think the value of oral history and the need to really go to people, and then particularly often elders and those who have really kept the memories of the community, uh, and I think particularly from a kind of decolonizing point of view, that's, I think, especially important because often written resources are controlled by Westerners, and colonial records reflect their own kind of colonial biases. And so to actually go to two people in the context, particularly speaking as a white outsider, it was probably a real big lesson. And then I think related to that with Catholic social thought, I think for me, again, my book on Rwanda is it's not easy reading, and anything about what happened with the genocide there is very difficult, and the church's complicity in many cases with what happened. But so in honesty, I was sort of looking for, okay, is there alternatives to just this very, very negative trajectory? And I think for me, it was also inspiring to see within a very difficult social and political context, and the inevitability of human sin, that you have people who I think really do stand out as these exemplars, and really can teach us a lot about what it means in our own ways to try to move the needle a little bit, or as Mother Teresa used to say, um, to light a candle, do something to kind of move things forward. I mean, not all of us are gonna, be the Mother Teresa of Uganda or whatever, but I think it's a call to it, because I do think we can. There's always a temptation of like giving in to, what the Jesuits would call desolation, or just or giving into cynicism, and like, oh, everything sucks, and everything's just, and particularly in 2020 with everything going on. But that's not really the right takeaway, right? I mean, things are probably going to suck, but but if anything, even more, one should be moving, right? I mean, the more it sucks, the more you should be.
I couldn't agree more.
Right, and
if you're comfortable, that's when you stop.
Right. So I think in my mind, seeing the long-term way in which, like, we didn't talk a lot about her, but someone like Rosalba Oiwa, peace activist, they 30 years of working on these questions in the midst of war and reconstruction, and being hounded by the government, having death threats, and just staying with it, right? And not, like, as one of her colleagues said, just the politics of endurance. And I think that to me was also a takeaway. And even for me, challenged me to think, like, okay, you can't move the needle everywhere, but here in Omaha or as a teacher, other things, what can you do? Because I think, again, global media can almost overextend us. And I think for me, these people call me back also to the local, and what do you know, and what can you actually do? Because it takes time. I mean, like Father Tonino said, it takes 5 years just to get to know a place. It takes 10 years to make any change. It takes 30 years to actually sustain it. So, so I think that to me is also an important takeaway. And so not always to think about huge, big impact, or how many followers you have, or making a big splash, but like, how are you really moving things on the ground? And for me, particularly Rosalba was just such a model of that. She should be better known, and I hope this book will help with that. But she doesn't care. It's like I don't care if I'm getting a bunch of international awards. Like, my job is to kind of move the situation locally, and she's done tremendous work in that regard.